Are you a business owner looking for real advice and input? You're in the right place. From concept to launch to growth, funding, and beyond. Welcome to Startup Hustle with your hosts. One once sold a business for $150 million. The other, the author of $1 Million Bedroom. Here are your hosts of Startup Hustle, Matt DeCoursey and Matt Watson.
Matt Watson. Hi, Matt.
Oh man, I feel lost.
Tell me more.
I feel like I'm lost in a canyon.
Is it possibly at the bottom of the canyon that represents a gap between innovation of big companies and small companies? I mean, just guessing, just throwing something, just shooting from the hip here.
I mean, I think in multiple ways. I was thinking about like my personal life. But yeah, I think you're right.
Is that what you want to talk about here on the podcast?
Maybe that's what we want to hear.
Yeah.
Well, there we go. Let's just introduce our guest while you ponder your recent personal decisions and maybe your past as well. So, with us today is someone we both know, and I'm really happy to have here, Darcy Howe, who is the managing director of the KCRise Fund. Hi, Darcy.
Matt. Great to be with you today.
We appreciate you coming in.
We will not be talking about my personal, valley of death. We're going to be talking about entrepreneurs and companies and big and small.
We are.
I think as an entrepreneur, though, a lot of times we feel like we're lost in a canyon.
Yes. Yeah.
That's where I feel most days.
Yeah, well, I mean, that comes with the
And
territory.
there's employees and customers on either side of the canyon, I think, and I'm lost in the middle.
So where do the investors run in that side of the lost?
Are they at the bottom?
Are
they at the bottom of the canyon with me? I don't know.
But well, on some level, and hopefully we're not taking a totally different turn. I mean, you have to worry about the employees and the clients and the product that you offer and bridging that gap. And if you can do that, then the investors will actually see the results of what they're doing. But, Darcy, to give a little background for those listening, let's talk about the KCRise Fund for just a second. So there's a little context about what you do, because you, quite forwardly, you hand out a lot of money to those that you and the fund feel are investment worthy.
It's true, and we are part of, I'd say what the KCRise Fund represents is the future of how investors and how entrepreneurs think about growing businesses. And what I mean by that is we're regional. So we are a regional fund. Like, why would anybody invest in a regional fund, and why would a regional fund even exist? And it's because so many cool things are being built outside of the coasts.
Right.
And it was very clear that the coasts are super organized about the way they connect on talent and money and ideas and rinse and repeat. They're really good at all of that. And we're not so good at that. We're newer at it. You'd think we would have pioneered it. We are the pioneers out here in the middle of the country, but we're pretty far behind in that. So we saw an opportunity as, I think of myself as a capital entrepreneur.
Sure.
Saw an opportunity to bridge that gap and connect great ideas, people who have great businesses they're starting to build, and bring the capital to them and help the capital learn how to be good early stage investors. It's very different. I spent my entire career as an asset manager helping families invest their money, and what early stage is not like the public markets. It takes a tremendous amount of discipline and a lot of fortitude, and so it's trying to help investors also learn that out here in the Middle West.
When you mention discipline, you're just like, obviously, anytime you're a known or institutional or any type of investor, you get you see a lot of pitches, to put it in baseball terms, and you can't swing at every single one of them. So is that the discipline you're talking about?
It's the discipline of the understanding, the pattern recognition of who has that grit to make it work. Great ideas are, a dime a dozen. You can get a lot of at-bats with great ideas, but really getting a stellar Major League Baseball player at the bat is understanding what that looks like. What does that player look like?
And what are a couple of the traits that make someone stand out?
Super grit. How do you see super grit? When I get too many things in my inbox and you're still pestering me and needling me and trying to figure out how to make a connection and bring value, show me what you're worth, not just the time element of, gee, I'm going to put her back on my CRM and, bug her again. But it's more like, what are you showing me that I can have data points that go, wow.
How bad do you want it?
And there are 8 data points, and I might do a little checking on somebody else. Hey, has somebody been talking to you too? And just looking at data points that can help determine how that individual is seeing how they're developing that business. Developing the business is the secret sauce, right? It is, to me, more than the idea, because a lot of people had great ideas. If you read Victor Huang's book, Rainforest, where he talks about the actual idea for Google came up in Lawrence, Kansas, in our own backyard. Two professors at KU had essentially an idea that became Google, but didn't become Google because they didn't have the infrastructure, they didn't have the people around them that understood how special what they did was and how to help them build that. That's where the coasts have been really great, and we're getting better. We're actually, I think, really in Kansas City, where I live and where you guys live, I think we're getting damn good at it. But it's
that kind of leads into what we were going to talk about today, because you're saying here's some guys with they come up with the concept for something like Google, and then you have big companies, you have small companies, and you have a lot of input and thoughts about the gap that because we'll look at full scale. We got big enough, fast enough, and I was just saying the other day to someone, I said, man, my life, it's so much easier in many ways to take over the world when we had 10 people than when we had 200. And it's like the analogy of trying to turn a battleship around in a swimming pool. The bigger you get, the harder it is to make change, the harder it is to make decisions, the harder it is sometimes to get consensus. And so how did these startup in the early stage or even middle stage companies work with the publicly traded?
It's so hard. Well, first of all, it's hard for the bigger companies to actually turn around and that battleship in the middle of the Panama Canal. It's so hard because, and understand, their job, why they're successful, their job is to stay in their lane, be really, really good in their lane. Hey guys, taking a pic?
And by the way, on our Instagram page, we now have a whole section for the selfie stick.
Oh.
Yeah. So if you want to check us out at Startup Hustle Podcast on Instagram, you can see all of my selfie stick pictures. So yeah.
Well, and today I'm wearing I'm going out and raising money look. So I next time, I'm going to wear my T-shirt look of working with entrepreneurs. But we digress.
We'll give you a full scale T-shirt to come back and follow.
There you go.
I actually do want to have you back at some point because you have such amazing input and information and advice for those wanting to raise money, which is such a huge topic in our world. Yeah.
Yeah, and so we talk about the stages of companies, and big companies, it's harder for them to move, and they're big machines and whatever. And one of the funny things that happened at Vin Solutions, I don't know if you've heard me say this before, I don't know if I've ever said it on the podcast before, but we got to a place where we were growing so fast, we were increasing our monthly recurring revenue by like $100,000, $200,000 a month, right?
Wow.
Which is a huge clip. And we were still making a lot of changes to the software. We were still innovating. We were releasing new things and all this stuff. But as part of that, we have some problems, right? Like we roll out new software and it doesn't work, or how do we train all the salespeople on how to sell this new thing? Or if we want to change the price, all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, how do we train 50 salespeople that there's a new price? And how do we do our quoting and send out proposals? And we have all these brochures, we have to change the price on it. Like everything becomes like this big project, which seems easy at the beginning. But at one time, my main business partner came to me and he's like, Matt, we are killing our competitors. We literally don't need to make one more change to the software. He said, if anything, you would help us by not making a change, because when you make a change and shit breaks, and then all of our customers call the next morning and our whole support team is derailed by all of these calls, it's worse for us. He's like, we would literally be better off if you didn't change anything in the software from now on.
And in the short run, that probably was right?
And it's just crazy though, like that's where we got. Like we were crushing our competitors. We had an amazing product. It was growing, it was scaling, but in some sense, we were as a team almost deciding to take less risk.
Yeah,
do you think that's
which is
one
what
of the
big
issues?
corporations have, right? Like,
do you think that's where it starts, Darcy? It's like as you are winning as a big company, and I don't know. I agree. Every part about everything you just said about that was my point from earlier. When you have to make a change and it affects 30 people, it's way easier than 2.
And at that time, this was a company that was doing somewhere between 20 and 30 million a year in revenue, right? Like, so when you're doing 3 million a year in revenue, 5 million, 10 million, you know, obviously you get to some big company, you're doing billions, right? Like, there's many stages along the way, and things change, right? At some point in time, they just get harder and harder to innovate, to take risk.
So the example you just used, you didn't really have an awareness of how to build a process to make change. So you were just hustling and building and hustling and building.
We were.
And if entrepreneurs understand, and part of that is getting a business person on your team, right? Technical founders are so amazing because they've got incredible abilities to find a product market fit that they know. But having that business person in there, like a COO or whatever, to just say, okay, how are we going to, we got to have change. We need somebody who's in charge of building that process for when change happens.
We lacked a ton of process and procedures, for sure. We had a bunch of cowboys running the whole thing, and I was one of them.
Well, bigger companies have the same problem, and I'd say
they have the opposite problem. They have a lot of process and procedure, but they have no innovation.
No, they have process and procedure, but they have no sense of urgency. So,
yes. So true.
What happens at the very top of big companies today, most of them are more my age, kind of the baby boomer life. You know, we were literally pre-internet. Our beginning of our careers were a slower pace, where you're looking at pink slips of people returning phone calls, and you're going, and just those are the people who now are in charge of this real-time, just accelerated pace, and they've built teams around them that build process the way they understood process. And the younger and younger our CEOs get, the better it's going to be, I think, for young companies to deal with big companies.
Well, and those companies are like, hey, we grew 10% this year. We had a great year.
Right.
Which is totally different than, like, if you're a startup, you're like, oh, we got to grow, like, 100% this year.
Well, I was talking.
Like, it's a whole different world from that perspective.
It's not even I think the difference too is not how much did you grow this year, but how did you grow relative to your industry and your competitors? Because Kansas City's got this problem where our competitors, which are Indianapolis and New York and Dallas, Chicago,
Denver, Austin.
You know, where would the talent go? Well, we're growing, but those places are growing faster. They're figuring out how to have that factor where people want to be attracted there. And I think that's it's the universal issue we have in today, which is the pace of change is accelerating. What kind of process do we have to capitalize on that? And where large companies can't do that easily internally, that's a huge thing to accelerate that process, that change process. What they can do is bring in young companies like yours and others to build in that sense of urgency, because you guys deal in real time much more quickly. So you are modeling the way for the larger corporation's team that's working with you, and you've built something that internally it would have taken them months and years to build. You've already built it. You're off the shelf. And many of the CEOs are so used to, we got to build it ourselves. Really, until the cloud came around, where they were building it themselves. I was at Merrill Lynch for over 3 decades. And man, we just knew there was nothing else out there to do what we needed to do. So we had to build it ourselves until Bloomberg came along and Reuters came along and built systems that we could plug and play and not have to build it ourselves. And that's what early stage companies do, is they help big companies. You've already built it for them. They can just plug and play. They just got to figure out that connector, right?
But that's good for the early companies too, because I mean, that part of what I think most people are seeking is a big check. I mean, they're buying you in many cases now.
First, they want to do business with you.
The big companies are buying growth too. Like my point earlier, like, they only grew 10% a year, which isn't a lot.
It's harder to get 10% when you're talking about $1 billion than it is when you are going from. Because if you look at our numbers at full scale, June over June, because we now finally have a whole year to compare. I mean, technically, we're up like 900%. But
yeah, because last June was been like zero.
It wasn't zero, but like, it was,
but it'll be hard to do that in the next 12 months.
Yeah. But
harder.
Well, we're gonna do that.
So
but,
I think
how about year 3, 4, and 5? And that's when so some of that is definitely unsustainable.
So there's a few things here to talk about. So like one of Stackify's key competitors is a company called New Relic, right? They're publicly traded now. I don't know how much. I don't remember what the revenue is. Let's say it's like $300 million a year. So if their goal is to grow 20% a year, 40% a year, they've got to add a lot of revenue, right? So now how do they do that? They got to sell a bajillion little accounts, or they got to focus all their efforts on getting some big fish. So
or they can go buy you.
Or they can go acquire people, right, to get growth. And so that's why these companies do this. And they, for example, are focused more on larger accounts. They're chasing big accounts that are spending big money because they've got to move the needle really big. They're focused on other enterprise accounts. Well, that creates an opportunity for my company because they're not focused on small and medium-sized accounts. Their pricing, how they sell their product, all that is focused on the enterprise. But that's what happens with a lot of companies as they start out. They're focused on, say, one part of the market, one part of the one niche, and all of a sudden they get bigger. They need to grow faster, so they're focused on bigger accounts, different types of accounts, whatever. But one of the interesting things too, when we sold Vin Solutions to AutoTrader, I got to go to the board meeting for AutoTrader. It was one of the coolest things I've ever done, actually.
What'd you learn?
I got to meet a couple billionaires. That was pretty cool. But it was just really, I'd never been to a board meeting of like a giant company. And this was a company that did hundreds of millions a year in revenue. So it was pretty cool. But one of the things they talked about is like their company charter was to grow 14% a year. Mm-hmm. Well, and one of the ways they have to do that is to do acquisitions. That, their core product is only going to grow so fast. Maybe it only continues to grow 5% a year, 10% a year. But they can take all the profits from that and drive them into other things that are growing much faster than they are, which is why they bought Vin Solutions. Vin Solutions was growing at a very fast pace, right? But it's just really cool to see how they think about that. And that's why these companies have to do acquisitions, is for them to grow. Think about somebody like AOL today. How would they even exist if they hadn't done acquisitions? Their core product is dead.
Okay.
Right?
Quick
not,
AOL.
Not at my dad's house, but sure.
Yeah. But it was just a good
Not
point.
At some
That's
of
why
my
these
friends' AOL
that's why these
addresses.
companies have to do acquisitions. They have to buy the little companies.
Okay, I got a quick AOL story. Do you know when AOL went public in the early 90s, what that IPO size was?
No.
Guess.
$1 billion.
$5 million.
$10 million.
Yeah.
A $10 million early 90s. That was what tech looked like in the early 90s.
They were raising $10 million? That's not what the company was
or was
worth.
that their market cap?
That was their raise.
That's how much they needed to raise, was $10 million.
So, but
which today would be a joke.
So, but think about it this way. Who made money on AOL? Mom and Pop made money because that went public when AOL was still a pretty young company, and individual investors who are not the big shots got to make money off of that. Who made money off of Uber going public?
VCs.
Goldman Sachs.
The big shots.
Yeah.
The big shots have so much money. They'll do roll-ups. They'll hold companies out to be, private forever and ever because they got a lot of money to do that now. That didn't exist back in the early 90s.
These big PE groups now control everything. Like that's one thing to talk about the CEO retreat is how the public market is slowly dying and it's being replaced by PE markets.
I would look at it and say investors.
That's not always bad though, because it's part of you guys were talking about innovation and the lack thereof, and acquiring companies. So much of that is about satisfying the needs that publicly traded markets have for certain metrics like growth and profit per PE
well, guess what? They
ratios
can't get it in Uber, at least not right away,
Yeah.
because it was all used up by the big. The big players, the big money players. So I think it's that kind of change. It just gives you one idea of change in a few decades on capital. Is we got to adapt to that. People have to figure out how to adapt to that and how to make money. And I would say in the public markets, just one last thing about the public markets, because that's where I came from, is we used to all the alpha being excess return over the average. All the alpha was in the public market. I mean, there was so much discovery because there wasn't that much information. Now there's so much nanosecond information on all kinds of things that it's difficult to make money in the public markets or alpha return over the markets. And therefore, where do you go to get alpha? I've been touting this with investors for the last couple of years once I started figuring out the whole venture side. Private equity. So alpha or return is in the private markets. First, private equity, which are more EBITDA kind of companies, and then down to where we are, which is the early stage, high growth, in our case, technology companies, is where you can get alpha. It's riskier because it's illiquid. It takes a while to know. You gotta. It might have been a greedy founder who had a stupid idea.
And if you can invest in a private equity fund that produces a 10 to 15% annual rate of return, that's a pretty solid investment.
Yeah. But I'm just going back to the world has changed. We have to figure out how to change. I'd like to give you a different example. The one you gave about a big corporation and needing to innovate by just buying. That's a big topic right now. And the big corporations have a lot of money too. Private equity has money. Big corps have money. They are doing well. Acquisition makes a ton of sense, and they are building up their venture arms of their companies to do just that. Let's do business with these young companies. Let's get to know them. Boy, they really fit well. How do they fit? Okay, let's just go buy them. There's another situation going on today, which is, and I'm using H&R Block as an example, one of our iconic hometown companies, Henry Block, who just died a couple weeks ago, and his brother Richard H&R, built this company. There wasn't even a business called tax preparation until these guys came about and built the industry. And somewhere along the way, they didn't accelerate their innovation. Somewhere along the way, TurboTax and all these other online figured out how to innovate in the business, the industry in which they actually created, and just took their shirt, right? H&R Block has been in trouble for the last, not in trouble, but it really had a tough time in the last almost decade. And the new CEO now, Jeff Jones, who was at Uber, who was a chief marketing officer at Target, super good guy, comes into town, breath of fresh air in our city, and goes, we never should have ceded that business to TurboTax. Are you kidding? We own that business. Now we need to figure out who are the right people in the right chairs. How do we make decisions going forward? We don't make that mistake again, and we regain what we lost, and we become the innovators again in our business. That's really hard to do in a big business.
I'm seeing some of that. I had a firsthand exposure, and I can't mention names here, but we have a client that had a publicly traded company acquire part of them. And as we were making the switch and they were increasing their team at full scale, I got a chance to talk to some of them and said, so you guys have I literally said this, you guys are a $4 billion market cap company. You have stores everywhere. Why this? And they said, because we need to learn how to be entrepreneurs again. This was literally the response. They said, we've gotten complacent with the mall and all these different things. And so these companies are, well, at least that one, I thought that was very eye-opening for me. Just to hear someone say that from such a big company.
But the problem with big companies is they're not very innovative and entrepreneurial, partly because guys and gals like us who couldn't even work there. I'm not employable. I can't work there.
We've both determined that. We're both
H&R Block came to me and said, Matt, we think you could do this. And I'm like, screw that. I don't want to work for you.
I don't know. Their innovation team worked at the Sprint Accelerator for about 6 months. Now they couldn't afford it. They went, they got to reconstitute this. But at the time when I saw their innovation team, let's see, there was an African American woman in dreadlocks. There were some people who really stereotypically, just by looking at them, had a different vibe from a corporate kind of vibe. They were off campus. This is the other cool thing. Maybe we can talk about Keystone Innovation District one of these days, because that's just what we're building to.
And Kevin's coming in to talk about that soon.
Good.
Yeah.
Kevin McGinnis, because it's what's happening. It's brilliant. And other cities have done this. They've done this. They're 10 or 15 years ahead of us. We got to get with the program. But
where you're going with this is that they segregated the innovative and creative people into a different environment, and that kind of defeats the purpose, right?
It allowed them to work and build and not be encumbered by this stay in your lane stuff.
That's part of why I do what I do, honestly. Like, I didn't own a suit for 2.5 years. I really didn't. I bought one last fall.
Because?
Because, well, A, I had to go to a wedding, and B, I was honestly worried that if someone died, I wouldn't look respectable at the funeral. Just saying.
You just wanted an excuse to wear the gold tie.
I had that before the C.
See, I told you.
Yeah, I did. but that's. I feel like that's.
By the way, I have my golden shoes just because when I hang out with you guys, I'm not wearing them today, but I should.
I have a nice pair on today. I'll post those on Instagram too. Some of my favorites, but I think that's and for the next gen coming up, that's really important. People have asked me, they're like, well, what do you wear to work or whatever? I'm like, dude, I work around tech people. I wear shorts. I can show up to work in flip-flops. I mean, let's look at Watson today.
Yeah, I got shorts on, wearing a baseball cap.
Yeah.
I am going to a baseball game today, too.
You're looking more like you're wearing your UVA colors with your orange and blue. And
you a Virginia Cavaliers fan?
No, I don't know.
He didn't know.
I don't really care if I match. I'm not going to be on camera or anything.
I'd say
like right now in 4K. Wave, hi.
Corporations, though, they get that. They understand that. They understand these baby boomers who are running it now have middle manager people who are younger than baby boomers, they themselves are scratching their heads like, how can I work with these people in their 20s and they want to have, they feel entitled, all these things, and yet I think that it's so exciting to see the workforce change. Hey, have we baby boomers done it all so great that we've left the world so great for everybody else? No, that's why you're innovating. That's why there's so many challenges that you're finding problems to solve. And the more we listen to the people who are innovating and what's going on and how do they need to work, where do you need to work? You need to work from home. You need to work from, I'm working from Michigan for part of this summer, by the way. I'm modeling the way. Right?
I think that one of the things to speed, increase, and just improve innovation is to remove layers of bullshit.
For sure.
Just like, and that's one of the things that as we were building full scale that we figured out very quickly. We're like, because the standard model with remote teams was you talk to someone's project manager and then they bring something back. It was like, well, I wouldn't want to do that. I want to talk to the people that are helping me innovate. I want to have firsthand exposure with them. So we eliminated that. We said our clients want to talk directly to our team, so we figured out how to make that happen. I mean, it was a little challenge at first. Would you agree? And then smoothed out.
Yeah, I mean, everything you learn from your initial lessons, and you just figure out how to get better at it.
Yeah, but I think that those layers, and I think that's one of the issues that exists with a large company, and even when it comes to doing business with the small companies, it's like 6,000 steps of everything.
That's one of the things that kills us at Stackify is we get these like 100 questions,
MSAs,
RFPs or security questionnaires, and it's like, oh my god, who even reads this crap? We have to.
Well, we had one, and once again, won't name, but someone had returned our MSA, and it was 3 times longer than when we gave it to them.
Just in case.
Big corps, let's just say the enlightened ones, are starting to get that. You want to do business with, just like, people in middle age want to do business with younger talent. You got to figure out how to do business with them. One of the things that we've done at the KCRise Fund is we have relationships with about 18 big corps around town, so that when one of our portfolio companies or any company comes to us and says, man, I'd really love to get into H&R Block. I'd like to sell something to them, or Hallmark or Cerner or whomever, Sprint. I've got somebody who is in charge, who they may not be the innovation person. They are the person in charge at that company that if I call, they will fast track that request to the right person. Now, the young company has to sell it themselves, but
and that's one of the best things.
We're going to get them in there. It could be 3 to 6 months.
And that's one of the best ways that those companies can help support the local startup community, right, is by utilizing their products and services if possible.
Absolutely. Well, and so back to, you can use H&R Block as the example. There are 3 companies right now who are trying to do business with them who I think could help them. And so we have our fast track person who is working with those ideas to see whether in fact and we have relationships, CEOs.
You guys literally have a fast track person? Like you keep someone there to overcome that issue?
No, it's somebody who has raised their hand, somebody who I've asked. And in that case, we've got somebody in HR, somebody in marketing, and a couple other folks who have said, yeah, I'll take a look at that, or I'll help get that to the right place. Often it has nothing to do with the innovation. They just are excited about what's going on in Kansas City.
And that's
they
what we need.
Want to be helpful.
That's what we need. I mean, I don't.
We need more of them. 18 is nothing. How many hundreds of companies do we have?
I mean,
we don't
at
need a lot more of
Stackify,
those.
we don't have H&R Block as a customer.
Well, it's the same thing.
We don't
it's
have
like
Sprint
you said,
as a customer, or
we
Garmin,
get that
or
at
Cerner, or any.
We get that at GigaBook. They want to sign up for like $100 a month account, and then they'd send us like a RFP that was ridiculous. Like, answer these 100 questions, fill out all this stuff, and I just throw them in the trash. I'm like, I can't. I need to keep you as a client for like 1,000 years to justify
You know who's
this.
figuring that out? It's really interesting to see the military is starting to figure that out. They know they have critical needs for. I saw one the other day of the helmets for women warfighters are too heavy. They have all of this technology in the helmet. Women's necks can't support that helmet as well. They're looking for innovation on that helmet. They're looking for innovation on what if they have bad food, somebody deliberately or not deliberately puts, gives them bad food in Afghanistan. How can we identify that? We've got a young company that we're putting in front of the Air Force for that. So the military has figured out through a couple of places, AF Works, WERX, AF Works for the Air Force. They're not coming to me now, but there are a couple of them that are WERX. You can just Google, fast track ideas for the military, and there's several of them where that it can be. It's a short time frame. It's a short application process. And if it's an idea they like, and by the way, they don't want your young company to be so dependent on the military that if they said no after a while that you would go bankrupt. So they want to help you to develop a product or that can, or software or whatever that can be used commercially as well. So they will actually give you non-dilutive money and be a customer. I mean, think about that.
Yeah,
what if our
huge.
corporations would do that sort of thing? So we think a lot at the KCRise Fund and some of the other things that I'm doing with the hashtag Back to KC for talent.
I love that, by the way.
KC Invest.
Do you know what that is?
Yeah, I went to one of those events.
You went to a KC Invest Ed event.
I went to one that was
you went to
about
the Back to KC event.
event.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I love
yeah,
that. Jessica Powell's going to come in.
I was
and we're
supposed to
gonna
be
talk
one of
about
the,
this.
I don't know what that was, like one of the locals that was partnering.
Yep.
With
you were supposed to be an ambassador. So
Ambassador.
the
We're going
champions
to
are
use
out
the
of town.
startup hustle to bring someone cool back to Kansas City. I'm positive of it. You know what else is cool?
Hey, you know what? Can I make that pitch just right here?
Do it.
If you grew up here, went to school in the Kansas City region,
Rock Chalk Jayhawks. Sorry.
and many others, other universities.
I don't acknowledge them.
You didn't graduate from KU either.
I didn't graduate from 4 other schools either. That doesn't mean I like K-State.
All right. So, but if you are listening to this and you grew up in this area and you are either on the tech or business side of a technology company, or you are in capital markets, or you're a consultant, and you're between, let's just say, late 20s, mid 40s, we'd love to talk to you and want to give you an incredible 2-day experience of, this is the Kansas City. You had no idea. Don't go staying in your mom's twin bed back in your home. You just come down and stay in the hot 21C hotel, and we will show you what Kansas City's like. And we've been building some incredible relationships with some folks who used to.
We were at a meeting. Was that last week? That with Kevin's meeting?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was there, you were there, and thank you for your passion about that. That was
me getting all verklempt that I'm.
Yeah,
just like,
that was moving actually. But one of the things that I brought up is like, Kansas City. There's cool stuff here. Like, it's cool. Like, there's a lot of stuff here, man. Like, and it's different than it was 20 years ago. Like, our downtown's popping, man.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
just. It's. Even my wife was saying that the other night. She's like, wow, I didn't even ever realize all this stuff was down there until we started going down to the Sprint Center in the Midland and stuff like that. And
there's like 100 really cool bars and restaurants you've never heard of.
Right there.
Yeah.
All right there. And, I've gone and done a lot of different things in a lot of different cities and been around music and all that. And, like, it's on par with good stuff. I mean, there's everything here that Austin has, or Denver. Well, maybe not Denver. But
we don't have the mountains.
We also don't have legal weed, which is one of the draws in Colorado. But
we also don't have super expensive real estate, Denver real estate, and the traffic out there is bad. But
also
anyway.
true. You know what's cool though that I want to do, and I know Darcy does too. I think Darcy wants to play Mixtape.
Yes.
So Mixtape the Game, which was just featured in Rolling Stone magazine as one of the summer must-have items.
You guys are just rocking on so many levels.
Well,
cool.
This isn't us. We did invest in this, and there's a digital product coming soon that we're helping with. But Joel Johnson at Mixtape is the creator of this, and he's the one. So you want to talk about? Let's talk about that for just a second.
If this has to do with remembering who
it's not a trivia game. It's completely subjective. But this is where we try to make a difference. So this was a non-standard product. They sold 49,000 and change versions of this game in December, and they were having a hard time finding a partner to do a digital partnership with here in Kansas City.
Because they were selling the physical.
Yeah, because it's different. This is different. It's a box. It's a game. Go to Mixtape the Game and check it out. Mixtapethegame.com and check it out. But I pulled a card, so we're making an app for this. It's by the way.
Can you just tell your audience what Mixtape is?
Yeah, it's well, we've been playing it on every episode.
I didn't hear it on the last episode. Okay,
maybe
anyway.
you'll hear it on this one.
All right.
So we pull a card and it's got a scenario, and we all name a song, and then we vote for each other, and you can't vote for yourself. Okay. So this one is if you only get one classic rock song to listen to while stranded on a desert island, what would it be? And I'm going with Help by the Beatles. Help, I need somebody.
Oh, so does it have to be germane to actually the situation you're in?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, it could
see.
maybe it doesn't have to be related to help. I mean, in this case, like it could just be your favorite song. Maybe you just want it. I've played this game. It's similar. Name 5 albums or 3 or whatever that you would want to be stranded on an island with. But yeah, so you got a classic rock song, and I'll give you a second to think about that. But you talk about non-standard things.
I'm thinking Fleetwood Mac, but I'm
which song? The first one that comes to your mind is probably it. Are you cheating, Watson? You are cheating.
I'm
See,
just
that's why
double checking I got the right song.
That's
I got
why.
it.
That's why.
Double checking I got the right song.
I can't. Yeah.
You're disqualified.
No, I was making sure I got the right name of the song.
This is why the Mixtape app is going to be super
I can't
helpful. This really was in Rolling Stone.
Okay, are you ready for my song?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going with Cheeseburger in Paradise.
Okay, and because you did work outside the rules, and I'm not going to make Darcy do this, but I would think you owe us all at least singing one line of the song.
No.
Oh, that's weak.
Don't stop thinking about tomorrow.
I like that. That's uplifting. And is that Fleetwood Mac?
That is.
Is it? So
are those our choices?
I'm voting for Darcy because I'm not voting for you because I think that you never vote for me.
I'm actually going to vote for you.
Are you?
For the Beatles.
I'm voting for you too, actually. Because you were smart. You came up with it quickly, and it was
we let him
germane
win
to the situation. Well, you didn't bring it.
You know what we need to do? We need to start a tally on our whiteboard. So on every episode, we'll put
No, we need to start it. We need to do it on our Instagram page so everyone can follow it. But yeah, so no, this is cool. But you talk about people with grit. That was what. Well, first off, I got this. You know, I have a history around music, and I got it. Like when Joel explained it to me. But with what we're doing, you've been to our suite events, trying to do something different. That's where we met him. He came to the Kiss concert. We did one of our sweet and greets.
Oh, this is a Kansas City guy?
This is. Yeah.
Oh.
And he's been at this for 5 years, and now it's really starting to come together.
Super cool.
And he's sold literally maybe a couple hundred less of 50,000 of these in December.
Of course, December, Christmas, stocking stuffer.
They went to Target and some other places, but now it's in Rolling Stone. We have an app coming out with it. I think this is going to be really big and really popular.
I've been to 2 baby showers in the last 2 weeks, and
babies like Mixtape?
They were using a think of the songs that have the word baby in them.
Oh yeah.
And it was interesting because generationally, you know, how people were thinking about different songs, and it was a great learning experience between.
Hit me, baby, one more time.
That was not one of them. Yeah. Oh my God. You went with Britney Spears.
Yeah.
Actually, I saw
There's baby in it.
I saw on Instagram yesterday of a baby that you put this thing up in the baby crib, and their little feet. This is a 2-month-old. Their little feet can touch, and it plays a little song, like, you know. And the kid loves the red one. I don't know if it's red or because he loves that song, but it's like banging on the red one. Like,
yeah.
Introducing music early is good.
Yesterday, when I was looking for an image of something else, when one of my books came out, I encouraged people that had bought them to send me pictures of them in interesting places, which really backfired on me because it really was like people were sending. They're like, "Dude, this book straightens out my crooked table leg. Great." or just like you know, just like stuff like that. Like a lot of pictures of like drink coasters. This helps me not burn my counter with a hot lasagna pan.
I am now going to take your book with me to Cebu and take it to some interesting places.
That's fun, but do it, and because it was funny because actually I found if someone had a picture of their baby, like a 3-month-old baby reading the book, and yeah, I felt good about that.
I'm going to find the opposite of the $1 million bedroom at a house in the Philippines, and I am going to take a picture with your book. And
I'm thinking creatively.
You know what? Entrepreneurship and innovation can happen anywhere, Matt. Right. It doesn't. And by the way, the $1 million bedroom was, so you have familiarity with Indianapolis. It was in I wasn't in like a great house. It was like a 1,600 square foot house. It was in a really popular area of Indy, but I mean, we had creaky floors. We had a squirrel that was in the crawl space below it at one point. It was a chipmunk, and I don't get me started on that.
So wait, how can people submit if they have a place they want to photograph themselves with your book?
Well, you can pick the book up on Amazon, or honestly, if you come by the office, we'll give you one.
No, but I mean, but this photograph, this idea.
Tag us on Instagram.
Okay.
Put the picture up, tag at Startup Hustle Podcast, and we'll see it. And we're also now going to have to create a mixtape scoreboard, which we'll post.
We'll have to do that
stuff there. So if you want to find out more about what KCRise does, you can go to KCRiseFund.com. And that gives more information about the investments that you do and some other stuff. You guys participate and work with some really interesting and innovative companies. If you get a chance, just check out what Darcy does just everywhere. I want to say thanks. I really do, and I mean that, because I have a passion for Kansas City and business and entrepreneurship the same way you do. My family's been in this town for like 150 years. Like, I'm raising my family here, like whatever. I mean, I do still want to buy an island somewhere, but I will come back to Kansas City during.
Have at least a pied to terre here, a little something downtown.
Yeah, and we were also talking, and I got to keep up with Matt, because once the podcast went into the top 100 on business podcasts on Apple, Watson went rock star on me. He's demanding a tour bus, a dressing room. Why do you need a live seahorse in your dressing room?
Well, and it needs to be a green one.
I thought you just needed 3 pounds of green M&Ms. Now you need a green seahorse.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got his.
Eccentric.
You guys are crushing it, and I'll tell you, you guys are embolic of, what's the right word? Anyway.
Crazy?
Yeah, that too. No, of
reckless, stupid,
why is Kansas City getting cooler and growing these amazing businesses and all? It's not because the big corps are leading the way. There are some other cities where that's what the big corps are doing. It's because of guys like you, people who are just getting off the sidelines and saying, "Wow, I can help do this. I can do a podcast. That. I can have people in our suite and get people to know one another." And it's a lot about building that connectivity. And you guys are awesome at it.
The suites have been fun, not only for us, but for our employees, for our families, for other people. That was kind of that was a weird risk. Like Matt is my business partner and everything. Yeah. I'm like, dude, we're going to spend all this money. And they're like, what? I'm like, I think it's going to work, which, is clearly a definitive statement, I think, with a bunch of question marks.
It worked.
And
it worked. It's been great.
Yeah, it's been fun. And it's been great. So, and by the way, if you're here in the region, go to fullscale.io, go to the contact page and submit your name, your business, or someone else's. And we really do. Last week I sent out an email that had booking links to 10 different events and I can't go to all of those, but there were baseball games, there were concerts, comedy events, all kinds of stuff at different venues around town. And
Big Slick, I'm so sad I couldn't go.
Yeah, that's tonight. We're going to the celebrity softball game. Softball. By the time this comes out, that will have already been in the past, but that's fun too. And
Patrick Mahomes on the baseball team.
No, I'm excited to see that. Yeah.
He says he wants to be in the outfield. Shag, he's a little concerned about his performance in the infield. So.
Well, Matt, are you playing in the celebrity softball game today?
No.
You're not? I'm planning on.
Maybe I can be the water boy.
I'll be in next year's. But anyway, if you're listening, you like the show, or if you don't like the show, I still like it if you reach down and hit that 5th star on the ratings and reviews. Leave a review that's good, and we'll talk about you on the show.
All right. Thank you.
So see you next time.